Hi everyone, my name is Mark Jensen. My group is Veronica Noriega, Daniel Chunn, and myself, and we're going to be presenting the disease Zika virus. I'm going to begin by explaining a brief history about the Zika virus. In 1947, a British virus hunter named George Dick was studying yellow fever in a forest called Zika in Uganda, Africa. As part of his research, he would take rhesus monkeys and put them into cages. He would then allow these monkeys to be bitten by mosquitoes in the hope that he could isolate the yellow fever virus from their blood. As he was researching the monkeys' blood, he discovered a virus that nobody had ever seen before. The virus was named Zika, after the forest it was found in. The Zika virus was not found in a human until over 20 years later. It wasn't until 1968 that the first record of a human infection was recorded in Nigeria. Over the next decade, the virus would completely spread throughout Africa and Asia. Other cases of the virus were not seen in other countries until over 40 years later, when the virus would reemerge in some French Polynesian islands. In August 2014, the year of the FIFA World Cup in Brazil, the virus finally landed in South America, where it was getting a strong hold in Brazil and was working its way up to Central America. The Zika virus comes from the genus Flavivirus. This is the same genus of the virus that caused diseases like yellow fever, dengue fever, West Nile, and Japanese encephalitis. The genome is a positive-sense, single-stranded RNA virus. The nucleocapsid of the Zika virus ranges from 25 to 30 nanometers in diameter. Surrounding the nucleocapsid is a host membrane lipid bilayer that is covered with two different envelope proteins. The envelope proteins are called E proteins, E for envelope, and M proteins, M for membrane. These envelope proteins give the Zika virus an icosahedral symmetry. The total diameter of the Zika virus is 40 nanometers. Here's a diagram of the structure of the Zika virus. This squiggly green line is the genome RNA, and it's surrounded by this blue shell, which is the capsid. This tan circle around the capsid is the lipid bilayer membrane, and these structures right here are the envelope proteins. Brown is the envelope protein E, and this blue one here is the envelope protein M. This is a high-resolution image taken by a group of students at Purdue University. The image is of the envelope proteins of the Zika virus. The brown-colored proteins represent the E proteins, and the blue-colored proteins represent the M proteins. The replication of the Zika virus is similar to other flaviviruses. It begins when the virus attaches to receptor cells on the host cell by using the virus's envelope E proteins. This brings the virus into the host cell through a process called endocytosis. Once the virus is inside the cell, the virus membrane will fuse with a bubble-like structure called an endosome. It is here that the virus will release the RNA genome into the cytoplasm of the host cell. Like I mentioned earlier, the Zika virus is positive-sense single-stranded RNA, which means that when the RNA is released into the host cell cytoplasm, it is immediately ready for protein translation. The single-stranded RNA is then translated into polyproteins, which are then used to form all structural and non-structural proteins. Once the proteins have been formed, replication will take place in cytoplasmic factories within the endoplasmic reticulum of the host cell. This is where the creation of double-stranded RNA occurs. The double-stranded RNA is then transcribed or replicated, which results in new positive-sense single-stranded RNA molecules. From there, assembly of the final virion products are completed and bud in the endoplasmic reticulum. Once the final virions are created, they are transported to the Golgi apparatus and then released from the host cell through exocytosis, where they can go find other host cells to infect within the organism.
Hi, I'm Veronica Noriega, and I will be discussing the reservoir, the treatment, and the signs and symptoms of the Zika virus. Reservoir. The Zika virus main reservoir species remains unknown. The Zika virus is a mosquito-borne flavivirus which is closely related to the dengue and yellow fever virus. However, possible reservoirs have been found to be both in West Africa monkeys and rodents. We can also consider humans as reservoirs. Once they have been infected, they carry the virus even if they have no symptoms. Transmission. There are 4 possible ways of transmission. Zika virus is primarily transmitted to people through a bite of an infected Aedes mosquito. Mosquitoes that spread the Zika virus have been found to bite at any time of day or night. These mosquitoes become infected when they feed on an infected person. Another form of transmission is through pregnancy. A pregnant woman can pass the virus to her fetus during pregnancy or at delivery. Thus, it can cause birth defects. Sexual intercourse has also been found to be another way of transmission. It is passed through sexual intercourse from an infected person to their partner. It can pass to the partner whether or not there are symptoms. The virus is transmitted sexually through bodily fluids such as vaginal fluids and semen. Research has found that Zika virus remains the longest in semen over any body fluid. Lastly, transmission can also happen through blood transfusion. Although there have not been many reports of the transmission through transfusion, there have been some cases found in Brazil and French Polynesia after an outbreak. Signs and symptoms. There are some signs and symptoms for the Zika virus. The most common signs of the virus consist of fever, rash, and conjunctivitis. The most common symptoms are headaches, joint pain, and muscle pain. Although most people who are infected with the Zika virus do not have symptoms, there are some who do get mild symptoms.
Hello, I am Daniel Chunn, and I'll be discussing the prevention and treatment of the Zika virus. Since Zika is transmitted through mosquito bites and sex, the best way to avoid the Zika virus is to avoid those things. Avoid getting bitten by mosquitoes by using insect repellent. Cover up as much as possible with long sleeves and pants. And lastly, stay inside with the windows closed as much as you can. Keep in mind mosquitoes come out both day and night. Sex should be avoided, especially if you don't know if the person has Zika or not. You should always practice safe sex by using condoms. They are the best way to prevent the spread of the Zika virus from sex. You should also keep in mind that Zika is currently only found in certain areas. Check out the Zika map if you're planning to do any traveling. At the current time, there is no known cure for Zika. You can treat the symptoms, though. Make sure to drink plenty of water and get plenty of bed rest. To reduce your fever, you could take some medicine, but avoid any non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs to reduce the risk of bleeding. If you have any questions, don't be afraid to ask a healthcare provider. What I found interesting is that the Egyptide mosquito is the only breed of mosquito that spreads the Zika virus.
Hi everyone, this is Mark again. I was interested in studying about the Zika virus because in August 2016, my wife and I went on an Eastern Caribbean cruise. At that time, the Zika epidemic had occurred, and we were made aware of the potential dangers of traveling to some of the countries where there had been outbreaks of the Zika virus. Here's something I found interesting while I was researching this virus. So the virus was first discovered in 1947, but it wasn't until over 65 years later that the virus became an epidemic in the Americas. So why is it that it took so long before the Zika became a public health emergency? In 2014, when cases of Zika virus infections were high in northeastern Brazil, they had started to see an unusual increase in a birth defect called microcephaly. Microcephaly is a condition with newborn babies where the head and brain are underdeveloped. This increase in microcephaly was linked to the Zika virus outbreak. Brazil typically reports about 150 to 200 cases of microcephaly per year, but by the end of 2015, Brazil had reported upwards of 4,000 cases of microcephaly. By February 2016, the World Health Organization was also linking Zika virus infections with Guillain-Barré syndrome, which is a neurological disorder that causes muscle weakness and temporary paralysis. This led the World Health Organization to declare the emergence of the Zika virus as a public health emergency. So because of this, travel warnings were issued that discouraged pregnant women or couples planning on getting pregnant from traveling to countries that had recorded Zika infections. Some airlines even issued refunds to some of their customers that were planning on traveling during that time. Perhaps some of you or some of your friends or family had to change your travel plans at that time because of the Zika virus.
What I found interesting was that even though the Zika virus only lasts in an infected person for 1 week, that person is then protected from future infections. This is the end of our presentation. Here are some references.